So welcome again. And I invite you to look around the room. I've got the best view in the house. I can see all my Zoomers and all my roomers. So say hi to everybody. Those who are not afraid of the rain. Yeah. It's good to see some faces that I haven't seen for a while. So glad you're here tonight. And the new faces in the room too. So I hope that tonight's talk will be supportive no matter where you are in your practice. I've been focusing on awareness as the way to realization. And I know that we normally practice with the breath and the body, the breath and the body. And that's the practice we did tonight, one version of a practice that you could work with your breath and your body. It's simple and it's challenging. It seems so easy, right? But the first time I did a sit with somebody ringing a mindfulness bell, you know, I was off in la la land almost every time the bell rang. So I loved that practice and the randomness of it. And afterwards, I'd be interested to hear, if that was helpful for you or not. So when we get into the habit of this practice, of this sitting practice, it becomes kind of an exciting part of life, something that we look forward to. And it's sort of weird that you could, look forward to or even be excited about just going to your cushion and sitting quietly. But eventually, a lot of stuff begins to unpack itself without you doing much of anything except staying with the breath and just tracking the body. So this is the core of the practice, and this is what we teach everyone that walks in the door. And I've heard that in a lot of traditions, the teachers only teach this for the first 2 years of practice. Just go back to the breath, go back to the body over and over and over. And I've also read that this was the practice that the Buddha was doing as he passed into Nibbana, as he died. I guess for him it was an undeath, but this was the practice at that time. So it says a lot about it. And I think that for me, at a certain point, I thought, well, aren't there more practices like in our tradition, in the Theravadan tradition? Because there's many, Tibetan and Zen and Mahayana. There's a lot of other traditions that have a lot of other practices. But for us, what else is there in the insight meditation tradition? So that's what I'd like to talk about tonight, is bring a couple more practices to us to work with. So all of these practices are awareness practices. Everything is geared towards becoming aware of our lives, as much of our lives as possible. I'm still amazed that I can do something and not remember it, like move a spoon or fill a vase or do something, and then I turn around moments later. Did I do that yet, or did I not do that? It's we have a lot of moments like that where we're not present for what we're doing. And so this training is all about the mind muscle, just being aware. The Buddha said, when you're walking, when you're sitting, when you're eating, when you're urinating, when you're defecating, yes, he named those things, when you're lying down, like every single thing, walking the dog, doing the dishes. So if we're going to ever get to the point where we are mindfully doing everything in our life, then we need to titrate this awareness, that we need to bring just enough energy to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of the breath and the body I loved when Joe Parisi spoke recently and he said, just give about 10% of your attention to the breath in the background. And it will really be an effective way to kind of tether you to awareness, some sort of awareness, and that there's many, many, many things we can be aware of. But I loved when he said that, and I've been practicing with that. That was really good advice. So we do this to break free of the trance of thinking because we're really enamored with our own thoughts, which are pretty helpful a lot of the time. We'll talk about that in a minute. And to break free of the trance of feeling, because we're also enamored with all of the feeling tones and emotions that life brings to us. And we kind of seek that out, stuff that makes us happy and makes us feel good. That's what we're looking for, or something to chew on intellectually. So that does create a trance. There's nothing wrong with it, but just learning to be aware of that brings a whole nother level of knowing to ourselves. And as we know ourselves more deeply, we easily know others more deeply. We pay attention to others, and that is as good as being loved, to have someone really, really listening and paying attention to you is rare these days. John said just the other day that he hates it when the cashier checks him out, and if he has change or a receipt, that they just push it to him. They don't even look at him, And then, whoops, I think I just lost my mic. And that's kind of the way it is. Everybody's busy. So one of the main contents here is willingness. One of the main components is just willingness, just making yourself available to this process. We work with beginner's mind until we die, because that keeps this practice fresh and alive. And it keeps us, I hope, just wanting to be aware of how things really are. What's the truth about this? Not creating dramas. That used to be a lot of fun. It's not that much fun anymore, I don't think. And then we create a wholesome wanting here, which, supersedes like the cheeseburger wanting or the shopping wanting or the glass of wine wanting or the next road trip or all the wantings that are piled up in our life, the hit of a new relationship. This is a new wanting that's wholesome, that's super beneficial, that can really carry us far, all the way to our deathbed. And if you practice this until you die, you're going to have probably a beautiful death, hopefully. So we're cultivating awareness. Awareness is vast and quiet, and it's always already there under everything that we do, just waiting for us to uncover it. But there's another side to this practice, this awareness. Ajahn Chah talked about it when he said, confronting the self, which is when we're watching and uncovering, can be like walking into a hurricane. So I can just imagine, the hair blowing back and the cheeks flapping in the breeze. And it's kind of one of those, I've had those kind of sits. I don't know if you guys have, where it's just so, you don't want to be thinking about the stuff that's coming up and you feel like you should be doing something else and you're very physically uncomfortable and anywhere but the cushion, please, please, please. Or fear is coming up, or deep grief or anxiety. I mean, it's all there. But true safety can really only be experienced here in our own body and mind with fully present awareness. I'd rather sit with that stuff and make friends with it than have it sabotage me when I least expect it. So these practices I bring to you tonight are awareness practices, and some of you might recognize them. For others, they'll be completely new. I'll be interested to hear what you resonate with. So these are all about meeting the moment and not arguing with it. That's where the power and skill is developed, because there's so many things that aren't quite right or that we vehemently disagree with. So just practicing meeting the moment as it is, with acceptance, that's radical. That's when we begin to see things as they are. And this is the beginning of insight, which that's the seed of wisdom. So the practice is based on being with things as they are, meeting the moment with awareness, and not getting pushed or pulled by the winds of the hurricane. We just let go and align, or grab onto something and align with the wind. And we can access a quiet, collected calm when we do this. And this doesn't mean that we go along with everything without standing up for what we know to be true and just, but it is the best way to begin the process of insight and possibly to reform a situation that we might believe is not working the way that it could. So in this way, mindfulness with breath and body and the additional practices that I'm about to talk about are the doorways to wisdom. We began tonight with mindfulness of breathing and body awareness. We'll always come back to that practice, and you'll be your own narrator, usually for that practice. And eventually the narration will drop away and you might have some silence in your practice. And so the other ways of practice, there are 4 main practices with many, many, many sub-practices under each one. But they're concerned with the power of direct experience, because the Buddha always said, Ehipassiko, come and see, try it on, give it a fair shake, see if it works for you. So the second practice I'm bringing you tonight is awareness of emotions and feeling tones. Because I've spent the most time with this practice after the core practice, I'm going to say a little bit more about this, starting with a teacher in Burma, Sayadaw U Tejaniya. He says, when we work with emotions, we can observe if there's anger in the mind, don't think more about what is making you angry. That just fuels your fire. Instead, notice, there's anger, and get interested in it. This is anger. What's it like? This is the nature of anger. And just bring this awareness continually. In this way, you don't work at being angry, you work at being continuously aware. So you're kind of making friends with an emotion that you might judge as bad or unwholesome. But really, if you're just doing your observation, your scientific private investigation work, you're just learning, oh, my body gets hot. Oh, my breathing speeds up. Wow, I get this surge of energy. It's anger is a really interesting thing to observe. And if you get angry frequently, like I used to do, you can see it right away, and you learn not to say anything in that moment or in the next few moments. So there's so much to investigate with awareness of emotions and feelings. And the word for this is Vedana. Vedana. And it's also like feeling tones that are coming and going all the time, changing, changing, changing. Everything I'm talking about tonight is impermanent. So with this practice, like I said, bring just enough energy to kind of see what's going on, and don't waste energy like trying to think, well, why is normally not the question to ask. It's more like, what is going on? What is here for me, and what is not here for me? So curiosity, that's what we want to bring. Pema Chodron says about this, emotions are like the weather, but our true nature is much more like the sky, vast, clear, and open. So when you're practicing and you notice a feeling tone arise or a shift in your emotions, get curious. What's the nature of sadness? What's the nature of joy? Letting it be without trying to change it or grasp onto it. And also not getting attached to all the thoughts that usually come right behind the emotion. Just leave it. I've noticed anxiety in the body brings tightness and brittleness to me. I've noticed also joy feels like energy dancing in my body. So when you begin to track these emotions and know them well, you're building a deep knowing, almost a library about your own emotions, and you can see which ones come the most often and which ones you might have to work for to bring to yourself. I need more joy. I need more lightness. I need more levity. Find friends that laugh a lot, you know. And sometimes you might feel stuck, and you can know that. We're just reinforcing being aware. So this is a good example of this. Yesterday, John and I were taking a walk in our neighborhood. It was about 5:30 or 6 p.m. and we walked by a street light and it made a little muffled clink sound and then flickered on. And I felt a good feeling when I heard that sound. That's Vedana, like a feeling just floats in. And a few seconds later, I said, I can practically hear my father's voice saying, "Be back home when the streetlights come on." We walked a short distance into this fading light, and suddenly I sensed this soft blanket of sadness kind of descend through my body. For a moment, I simply just felt it. I thought, but why am I sad? Of course, the why question, it doesn't really help. Twilight is my favorite time of day. I just had that little pleasant bump thinking about my dad. And then I noticed I was feeling very gentle about all this stuff. This whole episode of feeling tones, I felt like I could just sort of cradle it in my heart and not really understand it. And yet, by the end of the walk, I realized all that stuff washed up from over 50 years ago and just landed. My good father, long gone, and those playful days in the neighborhood. And all these things began to mingle with this moment of walking with my beloved at twilight, both of us getting older together, walking back to our little house, and the porch lights are on, and daffodils are up, and there's two little kitten faces in the window. And I was just washed with gratitude, another layer of Vedana. I mean, it was just full on. I really got how quickly it changes and how fleeting it all is and how it's mostly connected to memory. A lot of it is very connected to memory. So I'm better informed about my emotional landscape because I just let these feelings wash through and I just try to make notes of what they're like in the moment, and just hone the ability to pay attention in the moment. No judgment. Last year, I spent several months practicing with this, and I found that it's helpful to have somebody to check in with, like a meditation buddy, a teacher, a KM group, because sometimes just, it really doesn't make sense, the stuff that washes through or shows up. And it helps to have a friend to like bounce this off of, tease out the peculiar parts of this Vedana stuff. And the last thing I'll say about this is that so much compassion comes from this practice. It just really is a heart softening practice, working with feelings and feeling tones and just making as many notes as possible. So to keep us on track, we have investigation of the breath and the body. We have investigation of feeling tones. And our third practice is going to be investigation of mind and mind objects. So what the heck is a mind object? Right? The first time I read that, I was like, what? Anybody know? I know you know, some of you know. So thoughts and perceptions are mind objects. And let me start by saying, no matter what you think about yourself, your mind is nimble. When you start trying to watch mind objects like thoughts and perceptions, man, they're quick, they're slippery. It's really, by the time we notice one, poof, it's gone, and three or four more have already piled in right behind them. So just noticing a single thought, you should be really feel good about that. Um, I notice it mostly when I wake up in the morning. I try to notice my first in breath and do a body scan and maybe notice a thought. And it's usually, or it's often, an anxiety prone thought around so much happening and so much needing to get done. And then I can feel that in my body. And so I don't want to start the day that way. So oftentimes I'll just go, I just kind of flick it off. It's just a thought. I can make my day. I have some, what's the word I'm looking for? Executive power over at least how some parts of my day go. So working with mind and mind objects is a little more difficult than working with feeling tones. Like you'll notice these are getting progressively a little more complicated. But working with mind objects is so interesting because you can notice stinking thinking, when you're getting yourself all worked up about something, and you can just stop it in its tracks and replace it with something else, which is a really skillful thing to be able to do. You can notice that you think the same things a lot. I mean, and not particularly profound things either. I'll speak for myself, but this ongoing chatter, oh my gosh, so much of this is barely worth noticing. So why are we doing this? And the reason again is we're training in awareness. That's the whole point. And if you can grasp onto some slippery thoughts and even trace back to the thoughts before that and notice how it feels in your body, you're really doing yourself a favor with awareness training. Here's an example of noticing my thoughts as I was writing this. It's cold in here. My feet are cold. My neck hurts. Dinner was good tonight. I wonder if the cats are okay. Oh, now it's raining. Nobody's going to come. I wonder if Isabel's okay. I should check in with Becky. I wish that person would stop coughing. It's cold in here. So, you get the idea. And then occasionally you have a beautiful thought, an inspiring thought, something that might even be worth writing down and revisiting. So this is how we strengthen our awareness capacity. This is why monks move into monasteries. So they don't have anything to distract them, and they can go through all these different versions of developing awareness. Body and breath, feeling tones and feelings, and mind objects, or thoughts and perceptions, are the main three that I enjoy working with. And eventually you'll notice they just pile in randomly, like you might try to work with one, but the body thing shows up or the breath thing shows up. So the last one that's taught by the Buddha in the grand finale, which we are out of time that we won't go into, is awareness of Dhammas. And this one we could do a whole retreat around. It's really, really big. I'm not going to unpack it tonight, but it's about the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the aggregates, the hindrances, on and on and on and on. It's basically awareness of everything. So that makes for an excellent study, right? These foundations of awareness are said by the Buddha to be the direct path to the end of our suffering, because we begin to see cause and effect. We begin to see that we cause much of our own unhappiness. And we begin to understand our suffering, and we see clearly the truth of impermanence, how everything is just changing all the time. And eventually we understand the reality of emptiness. the invitation is always come and see for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I hope that some part of this was beneficial for you tonight. And I'll stop there.